How long does it take you to shift when you've experienced what you might call a collapse? Something has happened, a circumstance, an experience, an event that feels like it's just taken you down, right? Like you didn't, especially when it's shocking, you didn't expect it. Maybe it was the timing, whether it could have been some of the details involved. It could have just been like an emotional setback. Um, how long does it take for you to bounce back? And I'm asking this question because often it's assumed that certain events are going to take a very long time to get over. That somehow wallowing in feeling, those low grade feelings of anger, of fear, of sadness, of grief, whatever it is, that somehow it might even be noble to feel those over a long period of time. And what I want to tell you is that you don't have to do that. And when you awaken to that, guess what? You return to a sense of power about having a life and being able to create. And and yes, life can deliver so many things which just knock us off our feet, where we don't want to go forward, where we want to wallow, where we want the way out, right? We want to feel that reason to give up. But there's something in that is almost like it's a kind of manipulation to keep oneself down instead of moving forward and returning to power. And I've had many situations in my life where they took me by surprise and I was shocked or upset or disappointed and or betrayed, and the feelings were intense because I feel everything. I'm not somebody who wants to numb that out. If I care deeply. When I'm committed to something, I commit, and that is like the joy and the juice of life. So I don't attempt to keep things surface level to avoid that, like many people I see do. And so when something like that happens, I feel it. I feel it to the core. And it can feel extremely intense. Sometimes, like it could be days. Like in the past, it could have been days. But now it could be hours. And sometimes even shorter than that. And the reason is because it's almost like once you've experienced something, this sounds like counterintuitive, but once you've experienced certain things over and over, right? Like there's a part of you that almost goes, okay, here he goes again. I don't have to go down with it. And you become wiser to what is going on. You realize you're able to actually step back and you're able to be in the experience without falling prey to the negative emotions over a length of time that is going to be destructive to your well-being, to your happiness, to your passion, to your dreams. And when we awaken to this, what can happen is that we begin to actually use these experiences as fuel, not asking for the experiences to happen, not needing negative events to occur in order to then rise up. That would be exhausting if we did that to ourselves intentionally. But if, when things are happening, if you live an active life, if you live a life of love and passion and care, deep, deep care, then you're going to have more experiences often where there is disappointment, where there is sadness and grief and fury and pain, because you're going to be so much more engaged in the world. And yes, on a, we can we can step into the spiritual side of that and not be like taken down so hard, right? That's the benefit of the spiritual. It's not to bypass. We can still have our human experience, but now we realize there's actually something more. There's a bigger picture available. And so that's what shortening that time of collapse is about. So that fuel, like that energy can become fuel. And I had something happen yesterday. It was so in like like astrologically, they're talking about how it's intense times. And, I listened to a little bit of that. I don't know all the details, but, everything was kind of going pretty well for a while, right? And I was pleased. And then, like Monday, I had this blissful day, just such a blissful day. And it was not like my life suddenly shifted, but there was something about being more present to my dreams, and I ended up in an environment that I was inspired to go to that brought about this really blissful experience. And that was a lot because it was so highly resonant to the state that feels like bliss to me. And it was amazing. But the next day, it was like a series of absolute unexpected things from morning to night. And I went through this roller coaster. And I won't go into details. Um, some of it just because it's going to be a longer story, and some of it it's personal. But there was one incident which really surprised me, and it surprised me, but also my reaction to it surprised me because mentally, like I was like, okay, I can see why this happened, but emotionally, it was like a feeling emptiness in my heart, like this hole, this sadness and disappointment. And it was intense. And so it was, again, like this experience of both watching myself and then going through it. Like, my mind's going like, why are you feeling this way? But there was like, there isn't always a rhyme and reason. I could have explained it, but I allowed myself to go into those feelings. And at one point, I just like, I just, I'm going to take everything else off my list today because my state of being is more important than anything I have to do. And I felt it. And, fortunately, like I had another surprise that evening, and this was a happy one. And I decided, I'm going for it because I don't want to sit here wallowing in this particular negative state. And, I went, and it was good. It was helpful. I ended the evening on actually a much more positive note. Something else worked out that hadn't worked out that morning, so that was like a delight. And I went to bed, and I woke up, and I still had some of that residue from the situation that I experienced. And again, I thought, you know what, my state is more important than the things that I think I'm supposed to be doing today. And I took some time for that rest. Um, Afterwards, I had a class I was leading, and I brought myself fully into it. I, this is where a lot of my work, I can take those emotions I'm feeling and then move them into a creative act, a creative expression, and share it with those who were attending. And that's exactly what I did. And it was it it was good. It was good. I felt like I needed twice the time, but still, that was a great step in the right direction. And then I did one more piece to remember who I am. Remember 5D versus 3D. 3D as in, what's happening around us, the circumstances, the events, the situations. And I tapped into that more 5D energy. What is actually true? Who am I? Am I going to let myself collapse because of this experience? Is something that someone didn't do that for me was shocking, and or am I going to move forward? And then I started feeling that a bit of anger and a bit of fury, and that turned into that feeling a little bit of that revenge, where it's like, well, I'll show them by doing and being my best. And of course, I wouldn't run on that energy for a long time, but I could run on the fuel of, wait a second, this now highlights how much more important it is that I step into my dreams, even at a bolder rate than 2 days ago. And that's what fury or anger and even grief can do for us. It can be the fuel to change our mind, to change our state, and say, I'm going to alchemize it. I'm going to use that energy and I'm going to turn it into something that can create the life I want now. I can't change everything in the past, but I can create a future, and that's going to actually alter the way the past will then look. And to my surprise, like today, so like this is the next day, I am feeling significantly different. I'm not saying that there isn't still some residue and I may not hit up against some of these, the thought or the memory of what just occurred. I'm not saying that, because it might. But again, now I have a greater purpose. Now I have something that I can give this energy to. And so if any more residue shows up, I can bring it, I can feel that, I can look at it, I can remember that it is simply fuel. Energy doesn't disappear, it changes form. So the deeper the fury, the grief, the pain, the bigger can also be the joy, the love, the peace. And so when I go through these experiences, I allow myself to have that time where it may feel like a collapse, or I have to stop, I have to deal with this. But I use it knowing that I'm going to come out richer in some way. It's going to be more, I'm going to be more powerful in some way. But I need to intend that. And I need to also be able to step away from the situation and observe the experience so that I'm not caught in it fully. And, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I can say that there is like a sense of resolve that's come through this experience that I will now intentionally cultivate further. And this is something we can all do. And the more we do it, is not to deny our humanity, our feelings, the experiences, sensations we're going to go through, but is to say that it does not have to knock us down to the point that we ignore our dreams, that we let them go, that we give up. Instead, it allows us to rise up and say, no, this time I'm moving forward and I'm taking this energy with me, and I'm going to turn it into something that actually matters.